Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti YULIYANA binti AZMI and my metric number A21A3118. I will present case study 1. For the question 1, gross domestic product measures the total value of goods and services produced in a country and is used to assess economic performance and growth. Higher GDP indicates a stronger economy, while lower GDP suggests contraction or slowdown. For question 2.1 Roman, the factors that increase GDP include firstly is physical capital such as infrastructure and machinery. Second is human capital such as education and healthcare. Third is natural resources. And lastly is technology or innovation. These factors contribute to improve productivity, efficiency and output and driving economic growth. For 2 Roman, economic growth is typically measured by comparing GDP between years, but critics argue that alternative measures like the Gross National Happiness Index are needed for a more comprehensive assessment of well-being. G&H considers social, environmental, and psychology aspects, providing a holistic view of a country's progress and emphasizing sustainable development and community well-being. 3 Roman, real GDP is preferred over nominal GDP as it adjusts for inflation, helps assess policy effectiveness, and allow for meaningful comparison over time. 4 Roman, GDP rate is incomplete for measuring economic performance due to firstly is failure to account for unpaid service, second, neglecting external economic effect, and lastly, ignoring long-term sustainability.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NURUL AZIEDA binti KAMAL. I want to continue about the case study 3. The inflation rate is a measure of the percentage increase in the general price level of a good and services in an economy over a specific period of time. The cost inflation in the domestic market is the increases demand when there aggressive demand for the good and services. This is a good part inflation. The happen of inflation happen in the China and the United States is in China demand pull inflation. China has fastest rate economic growth. For US demand pull inflation, the US has a length of customer based on robots. Billy was explained economic policy could be used and how to implement of the policy. Economic policy refer to the action and measure undertaken by government of central bank. Last is the reason why inflation is considered to be a problem. Reduce purchasing power. Inflation equates to purchasing power of a money. When the price reaches, individual and household need to spend more money.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul binti ZULMI and my metric number is A21A2955. Okay, I will continue with case study 5. Full employment refers to a situation in an economy where nearly all individuals who are willing and able to work. The unemployment rate is measured that indicates the proportion of the labor force, and the labor force does not include individuals who are not seeking employment, such as full-time students. And the number of labor force in the market for the current month and total number of persons that not in a labor force for the employee is increased to 16.11 million individuals, representing at 0.2% month-on-month growth from the previous month figure of 16.08 million persons. For the unemployed, the number of unemployed persons is decreased to 600.9 thousand individuals, resulting in an employment rate of 3.6%. And the person not in a labor force number decreased by 1.6 thousand persons to 7.24 million individuals in November 2022. And the total labor force is 16.71 million persons. And lastly, what does this suggest regarding the type of unemployment? This increased activity could potentially lead to a temporary increase in frictional unemployment as these individuals take time to search for and secure suitable employment.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is SITI binti HASSIN. My grade number is 81A3091. I will present case study 6. This case study is about an increase in the minimum wage that may lead to employment. Question 1. Based on the article, explain why setting the new minimum wage will increase unemployment. Setting a new minimum wage will increase unemployment because some employer and company will hire fewer workers. The negative effect of a higher minimum wage can be only offset by increased worker productivity or company reducing their workforce. Some employers are forced to pay higher wage, thus they will hire fewer workers, while workers who might be willing to work for lower wage will be denied a job opportunity as a result of the government increase in the minimum wage. Question 2. Otherwise, a wage increase will only result in another round of inflation where minimum wage earners lose their job while their cost of living still increase, he added. Based on this statement, explain the relationship between inflation and wage increase. The relationship between inflation and wage increase is that when wage increase, it can cause an increase in the cost of goods and services, known as inflation. This is because businesses may raise their price to compensate for higher labor costs. As a result, the purchasing power of wage increase may be eroded and workers may not be able to purchase the same amount of goods and services as before. Besides, if businesses cannot afford to pay higher wage, they may reduce their workforce or reduce working hours, which may lead to unemployment. Therefore, it is important to consider the potential impact of wage increase on inflation and employment before implementing them. Lastly, question 3. What is the importance of increasing the minimum wage for Malaysian workers, especially in the private sector? The importance of increasing the minimum wage for Malaysian workers, especially in the private sector, is to raise the minimum wage in the hope that it will increase the spending power of workers through higher wage, which will stimulate the economy. In addition, this will increase the real purchasing power of the country low medium income group worker as well as increase the income of all levels of society. Besides, raising the minimum wage can reduce the unemployment rate. It is to ensure Malaysia remain globally competitive for our export and as an investment in destination.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is NURUL binti RASHID. My case number 81A3012 and I will present on case study 7 about the Malaysia unemployment rate down to 3.7 in July 2022. On the first question, unemployment refers to people who are interested in working but who did not find employment during the reference week, divided into two groups, those who are actively looking for work and those who are not. According to the case study, Malaysia unemployment rate decreased from 3.8% in June 2022 to 3.7 in July 2022. Individuals who are not employed or actively seeking work, such as housewives, students, retirees, those with disabilities, and those uninterested in finding work, are not considered part of the labour force. The number of individuals not in the labour force decreased slightly by 0.1% in June. The labour force consists of individuals aged 15 to 64 who are either employed or unemployed and actively seeking work. The labour force increased by 0.2% month over month. Next, on question 2, the unemployment rate in Malaysia improved due to various factors. The continuous operation of business activity increased the demand for employment and goods or service. This was supported by economic growth after the easing of COVID-19 restrictions, the normalizations of economic activity and the full reopening of international borders. The service sector, especially food and beverage service, wholesale and retail trade, and administrative and support service experienced employment growth. Similarly, the manufacture and construction sector also saw increased employment.
For case study 9, question 1, the exchange of commodities and services across national borders is referred to as international trade. It entails the import and exports of commodities and services between countries, and it's vital to the global economy. International commerce enables countries to specialize in producing commodities and services in which they are most efficient, and then trade with other countries for goods and services in which they are less efficient. For question 2, a trade surplus happens when a country exports more products and services than it imports. In other words, a country's exports exceed the value of its import. As a result, the country has a positive trade balance, which means that it earns more foreign currency than it spends on foreign products and services. For question 3, the countries that contribute to Malaysia's higher trade are China, ASEAN, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, and European Union, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates.
Next, I will continue with case study number 10. What kind of tariff has been imposed? India imposed an additional tariff on Australia agricultural product exports. These tariffs are a form of import tax, which means that when Australian agricultural products are imported into India, an extra fee is levied on top of the regular import duties. For the question number 2, what would be the ramification of India slapping on tax on Australia agricultural exports? The tax will increase the cost of their product in Indian market, making them less competitive compared to domestic Indian product or agricultural goods from countries without the tax. For the question number 3, using the appropriate diagram, examine the effect on tariff on Australia trade. How was welfare change? Okay, S1 and D1 represent the initial supply and demand curve without tariff. When the tariff is imposed, the supply curve shifts upward to S2 because the cost of exporting has increased due to the additional fees. As a result, the equilibrium price rises and the equilibrium quantity decreases. And the question number 4 is evaluate and critically analyze the benefits and drawbacks of international trade. Okay, the benefit of international trade is increased economic efficiency, which means international trade allows countries to specialize in producing goods and services that they can produce most efficiently and at a lower cost. This leads to increased productivity, efficiency, and overall economic growth.
Assalamualaikum. My name is AFIQAH AMIRAH binti OTHMAN and my matric number is A21A2755. So I would like to present about case study 13. The first is exchange rate. The meaning of exchange rate is the value of the one currency in relation to another currency. It is the rate at which one currency can be exchanged for another currency. Next is difference between depreciation and appreciation. So the first is depreciation of the ringgit Malaysia refer to a decrease in its value relative to other currencies, meaning that it takes more ringgit Malaysia to buy the same amount of foreign currency. For example, if the exchange rate of ringgit Malaysia to US dollar goes from 1 US dollar to 4 ringgit Malaysia to 1 US dollar to 4.5 ringgit Malaysia. This will indicate depreciation of the ringgit Malaysia relative to the US dollar. Next is appreciation of the ringgit Malaysia refer to an increase in its value relative to other currency, meaning that it takes fewer ringgit Malaysia to buy the same amount of foreign currency. For example, if the exchange rate of ringgit Malaysia to US dollar goes from 1 US dollar to 4 ringgit Malaysia to 1 US dollar to 3.5 ringgit Malaysia, this will indicate appreciation of the ringgit Malaysia relative to the US dollar. So the next is how Singapore strengthened its currency in line with the United States dollar. The first is monetary policy, second is fiscal policy, third, strong economic fundamental, and the last is foreign exchange reserve. So the factors the ringgit remain better than other Asian currency is political stability, sound monetary policy, adequate foreign exchange reserve, strong trade balance. The last is effects of a falling ringgit on the Malaysian. So we have the positive and the negative one. The positive is can export more competitive on the global market and can attract more foreign investor. The negative is higher inflation and more expensive for Malaysian to travel abroad. That's all from me. Thank you.